Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Swing Torah. We're going to learn today about Parsha VaEschanan, and we're going to learn a very interesting Gedaliah on the concept Hashem Hu Elokim Ein Od Milvado. We're going to learn about the Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, and we're going to learn about the unique, infinite, nature of Hashem. He's this unique, infinite creator. There is no other. And it's very interesting. And the clarity which Hashem showed us of his infinite qualities at the giving of the Torah. So the Gedaliah, he starts with a pasuk. He says, Ata har esa ledas ki Hashem hu ha-Elokim ein od milvado. So it says, you have been shown to know that Hashem, he is Elokim, and there is no other beside him. And then he brings the Rashi on that pasuk, and it says that when the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah, Pasak Lechem Shiva Rekiim, that Hashem opened up all seven of the heavens, all seven of the Rekiim, and it says, just as Hashem parted the Elyonim, just as Hashem parted the upper worlds, so too Kara es hataktonim. Hashem also parted the lower worlds, and then the Jewish people, they could see Yechidi, they could see Hashem's unique nature, that he was just one. Therefore, it says, Atah har esa ledas. And then that's why the Torah says that I have shown you to know. So the Gedaliah, he goes on, he says there are other two pasukim that come before this pasuk. And it says one of them writes, Hashama am kol Elokim medaber mitok ha'esh, ka'asher shamaita ata vayechi. It says, has there ever been another nation that heard the Kol Elokim, the voice of Elokim, speaking from the midst of the fire, that you heard and then you lived and you survived? You heard the voice of this infinite being and you survived. And then the other pasuk says, and then it says this pasuk is talking about the madrega, the high spiritual level that the Jewish people merited when they heard Hashem speak the Aseret Adibros, when Hashem spoke the Ten Commandments at Matan Torah, at the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. At first, the Midrash says that Hashem spoke all 10 commandments at once to show that this was an infinite being, that no limited person could ever do this. And then Hashem spoke the first two of the 10 commandments, Anochi v'lo hiyeh, like I am Hashem your God who took you out of Egypt, and you will have no other gods before me. And then the Torah is making the point that we heard this directly, we heard this voice directly from Hashem, from this infinite being, and we lived. And it says, we heard this, that you heard this from the mouth, mipi hagavora, you heard this from the Almighty, you heard this from the mouth of Hashem. And then the second pasuk, it says, O hanisa Elokim lavo lakachas lo goy mikerav goy. And then the second pasuk, it's talking about, it's saying like, or that Elokim made a miracle to come to Egypt and take a nation in the midst of another nation. Like he took us out of Egypt. And what does that mean? So he's saying that this is a tamiyah. It's kind of a question. It's a chiddush. It's something new that it's teaching about this pasuk. And it's saying that when we were in Mitzrayim, we sank down to a very low spiritual level. And it says, Halu ovdei kochavim v'halu. And we were accused of being like, well, the Egyptians, they were worshiping idols. And the Jewish people, when they were in Egypt, they were worshiping idols. So at first, the first pasuk, when we heard directly, when we heard Hashem speak to us when we were standing at Mount Sinai, we're talking about the highest spiritual level the nation could be at. And this is talking about the other extreme. This is talking about the lowest level the nation was at. When we were in Egypt, we were at the lowest spiritual level, and we actually descended to idol worship. But it says, but there remained in them this nakuda hapanimis. But there was this like inner point of shleimus, of completion. So we weren't completely tarnished when we were in Egypt. And then that was kind of awakened, that little inner spark of our neshama was awakened when the Shekhinah was revealed, and then Hashem took us out. V'yotze goy mikerav goy, one nation from the midst of another nation, meaning that we were kind of so sunk into Egypt at their low spiritual level, that Hashem had to actually separate us out. And it was like, in some sense, if you were looking on the surface, it would be hard to tell which was which. So it's not just taking one nation out of another nation, it's taking a nation that's so like assimilated and so sunk into this other nation. And then Hashem perfectly pulled us out of Egypt when we were at this lowest spiritual level. So then he's going to answer these questions. VaEsh Lomar. He says, concerning these two malos, these two like spiritual levels. And he says, this one of Klal Yisrael, where they merited to see this, and we merited the third pasuk where Hashem says, "Ata har'esa ladas," like I showed you to know, and Hashem actually rips, he tears the upper worlds so we can see, and he rips the lower worlds, and then we can see Yechidi. We can see that Hashem is this unique, infinite being. So the explanation of all this is brought by Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, and he explains the word olam. What's the olam in Lashon Kodesh? It means a world, and he says here it's from the Rabbi Salanter said it's from the language of Helam or Nister. That the word olam, the word world, comes from the word Helam, hidden, or secret. So this subject of the world. So this is we have olam hazeh, we have this world that we're living in right now, and we have olam haba, and the world to come, which is the completed, spiritually elevated version of this world. So then hahelem, olam hazeh, like the hidden quality of this world, it's because that Hashem's his godliness is not fully revealed. And what's the and where Hashem's godliness is kind of hidden, and he's saying, what's the purpose of that? The purpose of that is so that we can have bechira, we can have free will, we can have choice. We can choose between doing good or doing evil, and then we have nisayon, and then we can kind of be tested on where we are with our bechira, how well we're doing with our free will. So then the goal, the taklis of olam hazeh, the goal of this world, is that this is the place for avoda. This is the place where we can serve Hashem, and Hashem's hidden, his true nature is hidden, and we serve him by learning the Torah and doing the mitzvos, but we're going to get great reward. And so we're doing this in order, so we have a world that we can do the avoda in order to lekabel sechar. We can receive a great reward for all the tov b'chiraso, all the good we're doing with our free will. And then he says, this is explained at the beginning of Sefer Derech Hashem by the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Milvado. It says, therefore, Hashem created the world. He said, Ulechein, Nivra ha'olam bi'asara ma'amaros. Hashem created the world with these 10 sayings. So at the beginning of the Torah, in Sefer Bereshis, the book of Genesis, Hashem says 10 things to create the world. So Helam achar Helam. So it's saying, well, what these Asara Mamaros are doing is they're hiding Hashem, and then they're hiding Hashem one level after another. This is the Arizal's concept of Tzimtzum, like Hashem contracts his essence to create a place where the world can exist, until finally, like it's le'olamo, like die, it's enough, right? And it says yesh die be'olokosai, and like it's like Hashem kind of puts a limit on his godliness, like to all the creation. So nish barer nekudos habechira, and this clarifies like the point of the free will that's kind of weighted exactly. And then because there's this like limit to his godliness, then there's also like a limit, or he puts a limit to his hiddenness, right? I think what he's saying is, so there's a certain amount of Hashem's godliness revealed in the world, and then there's a certain amount of his hiddenness in the world, and this gives everyone the bechira. This gives them the free will to choose good over evil. There's just enough where we can see God in this world, we can see Hashem in this world, and then there's just enough where Hashem's hidden in this world. So it gives us this perfect free will. So it says, "V'olam haba," but the world to come, shehu makam kabbalas hasachar. But the world to come, that's going to be a place where we actually receive the reward for all the good, all the Torah and the mitzvahs we do in this world. So in this inyan, in this matter, the sachar is hu ha-hasaga. Very interesting. So the reward is understanding. And shemesig yoser v'yoser ad ein sof. And then in Olam Haba, a person will be able to perceive more and more and more, even up to the Ein Sof, even until the nature of the infinite being, of Hashem, its nature itself. So v'zechu tanug hanitzchi, and this is kind of an eternal and infinite pleasure of Olam Haba. And in order that there'll be this understanding, level after level, madrega achar madrega, level, spiritual level after spiritual level, there needs to be a very high madrega that's very hidden and secret, in order that there can be an understanding, a hasaga, rak b'madrega shel aksav, like the level we're at now. And then after this perception, that it will be revealed a little bit from the hiddenness, and then we'll be able to perceive more and more. So the Seder Gavoa, at the very highest level, after highest level, until the Ein Sof itself, until like the essence of the infinite being, until the nature of Hashem itself. So v'yesh lomer, so there is to say that this is the explanation of the words of Rashi, when Rashi's saying that Hashem, when we were given the Torah Mount Sinai, Rashi's saying that Hashem kind of tore up the upper worlds, and this was meaning like he tore up the Hester, he tore up the hiddenness of the heights of the Rome, and in this world there is like in this world there was like a revelation of the perception of Olam Haba. When it's saying that Hashem tore up the upper worlds, he gave the Jewish people a glimpse of how clearly we'll perceive the world in Olam Haba when we receive the Torah. So at Matan Torah, at the giving the Torah, it says kara, like Hashem tore, like Kiviyako was saying, like as if we're speaking of Hashem in like human terms, that the Elyonim, that the higher worlds, they were split the way of like all kind of like barriers or walls, and then we could see Hashem speaking with us, panim b'panim, face to face. You can't really see the face of an infinite being, but we're saying kiviyako as if like this was a person. We speak in terms of how people interact with each other. Hashem was speaking us face to face because we had a very clear perception, and Hashem kind of removed a lot of that hiddenness of the world. So that was removed, and we can clearly perceive the nature of Hashem much more than we ever did in the history of the world. And it's the level of perception that we'll have in Olam Haba. So this is the idea. This is like the knowledge, and this is why the pasuk says, "Atah har esa ladas," that you know, was there ever a nation that, you know, he's saying, I am showing you to know, ki Hashem hu Elokim, that the loving, kind nature of the name of Hashem is the same, you know, God as Elokim, of the din, punishment, and judgment. So both the aspects of love and reward, and punishment and judgment, it's all one infinite being. That this was at Bas Achas, this is at one moment that we had the Hasaga Gavoa Ma'od. We had a very just high perception of Hashem. Shiru'u v'yedu, and they saw and they knew b'birur, clearly she'ein od milvado, that there's no other God. There's only one infinite being. And this is the tam, it says the tema, this is the question of the first pasuk. Hishama am kol Elokim medaber mitoch ha'esh. That is there any nation that heard the voice of Elokim speaking from the midst of the fire? Because we say that Mount Sinai, with the top of it was this massive spiritual fire, and we heard Hashem's voice coming from this fire. Kasher shama'at ata vayechi, that you actually heard Hashem speak to you, and you lived. And it says shekara lehem al-yonim, and Hashem like tore up, he split the higher worlds. V'salak es ha-helam v'hester, and he kind of removed the hidden quality, the secret quality of the world. Shel hasaga ad sharu, until that we could perceive and we could see, and they would know ki Hashem hu Elokim, that we would know that Hashem is Elokim, and there's just no other, just one infinite being. So what does it mean, v'kara es ha-taktoni? What does it mean that Hashem tore the perception of the lower worlds? So a hester v'helem shel omek. So this is now removing the hiddenness and the secretness of the omek, of the depths, of the abyss of the world. And this is meaning that Shemifnei hachelam shel olam hazeh, that he was removing the hiddenness of this world, of olam hazeh. So yesh bechira li'adam lipol le'omek. And then a person also has the free will, but unfortunately, chas v'shalom, if a person chooses avera over a mitzvah, if he chooses evil over good, then a person can fall to the depths of this world. A person can fall into basically falling to Gehenna in this world. Instead of elevating ourselves to the height to Olam Haba, a person can fall like heading towards Gehenna into this world. So B'shas Matan Torah, so at the time of Matan Torah, that Hashem also tore this hiddenness in order that we could see the Yedo Ki Hashem Hu Elokim. So once again, we're seeing Hashem, we're seeing the reward aspect of doing all the mitzvahs in the Torah, and we're seeing a glimpse of Olam Hazeh. But Hashem also gave us a glimpse of what happens if we don't keep the Torah. What happens, Chas v'Shalom, if we're just doing Avera, and that the depths that, what happens to that. Like he gave us a glimpse of what happens, the aspect of Elokim, if a person is going to have to be punished. So the Nishar Behem Tamid Osa Nakuda B'Shlema. So then what remained to them was once again this complete point that Shalo Yiplu Legamre Letoch Hamek, that we would not completely fall into the depth. So even when we were in the lowest spiritual environment of Egypt, we didn't completely fall to what we call like the 50th level of Tumah. We were on the 49th level of Tumah, so we weren't completely gone. There's always this little spark that remains, even in the lowest of spiritual circumstances. So upon this is the question of the second pasuk, O Hanisa, like has there ever been such a great miracle that Hashem took like one nation from the midst of another nation, that even when we fell to our lowest spiritual level, Hashem still took us out. She'esh lechem koach zeh, because this little spark, this complete point inside our soul and inside our neshama, that there's a koach, there's a strength to libaka, to split hester, to split this hidden quality of Olam Hazeh, this hiddenness of this world, and know always ki Hashem hu Elokim, ein od Milvado. And what can raise us to the highest levels of spirituality, or what can save us, what the Gedaliah is saying, what can save us from when we fall so much, like in Chas v'Shalom, into like this spiritual abyss. What can always save us is this knowledge that there's only one infinite being, that Hashem hu Elokim, ein od Milvado. There is no other. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.